Hello and welcome to another episode of a Wicked Parley. Tonight, we're going to be talking about guys. We're going to be talking about what happens to guys and is there a problem in society today? As you might have noticed from the title of the episode, it's the Lost Boys generation. What does that mean? What's that about? We're going to get into it. But before we do, I just kind of want to bring up a couple things. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for supporting the episode and content. We really appreciate it. Not sure if you guys liked the pre-recorded episode or not that went out, but yeah, take a look for those on future Thursday mornings around 10 a.m. is when they go out. So anytime you want, just come check it out. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or just feedback in general, go ahead and hit us up on the Discord, or if you want to leave a comment in the comment section of the video, go for it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so when it comes to the idea of the Lost Boys generation, when the episode was being discussed, it was pitched around, there were a few ideas that were kicked around. One of the first things that's kind of important to, I think, probably address is that the concept of it. And that is the central fact that most men today, actually when I say most, let me preface this by saying that roughly 50 to 70%, somewhere in that range of men, essentially don't have motivation to grow up, to become functioning adults. And there's a lot of reasons for this. And we're going to get into each one of them. But just to kind of give you guys a brief idea of what we're going to be discussing exactly, we're going to talk about the fact that, guys require women to be interested in doing things. And when women actively discourage men from participating in society, or at least getting the attention that men would want from women, it is a definite stain and problem on the motivations of men. Another issue that kind of creeps up very often is the fact that men often work extremely difficult jobs to earn wages to support families that a lot of men aren't having, or at least they're not having in the big numbers that they used to. And so there's not really a drive for those kinds of positions. So what's happening? People aren't working those positions as much. So, that's going to be one of the main things we're going to kind of look at. Okay, so as you can tell from the graph we have up there, we definitely, which you can throw it back up there. Yeah. So you can kind of take a look at what exactly are in decline from 1983 to 2002, which is of course a older statistic, but this gets a general idea. Now, if you scale this to the current day, the graph of what you have less of is extreme. All right. We're talking crazy numbers. Okay. They're falling off left and right here. A lot of guys are going into entry level work and kind of staying there and working their way up through management. Guys who would traditionally pass through maybe the fast food or retail, and then go to college and maybe get a better job later on with that college degree. Instead, they're working their way up through whatever their entry job was, and some of them are making decent salaries, some are not as much. But these kinds of things are happening, and I think that it has to do with a lack of motivation from women and from society basically telling men no for a variety of reasons. Okay, so the first of the talking points that we kind of want to address is that, we ask a question, and a question that feel free, audience, if you guys have anything to say to it, go for it. The question is it okay for men to check out of society, a society that wants no part of them? Is this an okay thing? I think that when presented with this idea, my initial idea is that if you aren't wanted, you shouldn't be forced to participate. It should be completely okay to just leave, to check out, to not be around. And I think that this particular thing is kind of important to be able to acknowledge the fact that it's okay to be like, hey, I'm not going to be here anymore. You can flip to the next one. Anyways, so when it comes down to this, like, one of the main issues I think that gets bogged down a lot when it comes to this particular talking point has to do with the fact that, like, a lot of guys just kind of want to go, okay, well, I don't have any motivation. I have no reason to be here. I'm, X good looking. Have X going on in my life, or whatever the hell is going on that makes you, good or bad, or wherever the scale puts you. And you really recognize that whatever that is, whatever you are on that scale, you're not meeting the standard. You're not reaching high enough. And so the things you want, the jobs, the opportunities, the women, whatever it is, they're not available to you because you don't hit the minimum standard for entry. So rather than wasting your time hoping to get low-hanging fruit in whatever you're trying to go for, you just decide, hey, I'm just going to kind of do my own thing. And then I'm going to, try and make the best of whatever the situation is. The whole idea of, if you get lemons, make lemonade. But yeah, that's kind of, I think, what's kind of going on here. And I think that it should be okay for people to do this, but yet, there's a big waving finger by the government and certain, we'll say, loudmouth speakers saying, hey, no, you guys can't do that. You can't have your own things. You can't have nice things. So let's see here. We got a comment from Host. Host says, why stay? The only thing I owe society is my medical bills and student loans. Exactly. And here's the other thing too. Let's hope, hopefully I'm not like gender typing this, but I'm going to assume you're a guy. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to assume that. The fact that you have student loans, you're part of a pretty small percentile of guys who went to college. Like, most colleges, campuses comprise 70% women. So most men don't actually participate. So you are in a extremely strange situation right now. So yeah, I mean, you check out this graph. Isn't this crazy? All right. And this, by the way, is including associates, bachelors, masters, and doctorates. I guarantee you, if this graph didn't include associates, those numbers would be much more jagged towards females, because most guys check into college, get the associate degree, and check out and go to a trade school when they pursue higher education, because they realize that a lot of it's just kind of bullshit. Anyways, but that's for another topic. So when it comes down to is it okay? I'm definitely on the side 100% it is. The next thing I kind of want to mention is the fact that in today's society, men are often persuaded or told not to pursue masculine things. Now, I grew up in the 90s, okay? And in the 90s, it was pretty common to be able to play video games. There were comic books, things like this, and they had been around for a long period of time. And they, were either traditionally considered kid kind of things, but there was also there was the edgy comic books. There was the violent video games. And they were kind of like, well, I wouldn't say they were necessarily overtly masculine and manly. It was definitely catered to a male audience. And it feels like today that there are very predominant women who want to basically say, hey, you don't need to learn how to start a fire. You don't need to learn how to do any of these masculine things, and you're threatening us with your masculinity. And I think that when you think about the fact that a lot of people who are being born in this world are being born to single parents, they're being born to essentially, more often than not, let's face it, single moms. They lack that male responsibility, that male, influence in their life. And so what ends up happening a lot of times is that the mom doesn't want you to go and participate in sports because you might get hurt. You can't go to those karate lessons because you don't want to learn how to hurt people. You can't have those squirt guns or BB guns because those are bad, and they teach you how to do bad things. And so you get this idea that no matter what form of masculinity you try to pursue, it's automatically associated with a negative trait. And then we get this idea of toxic masculinity that has come out in recent years, which is just utter nonsense. And we could totally get into that in the Discord or on the comment section or in a future episode if you guys are interested in it. But I really think that it's important to highlight the fact that because we don't have the what we call the nuclear family structure as predominant, in society, at least American society today, we run into this huge problem of where exactly are young boys supposed to learn how to be men? Where are the examples of what a good man looks like does and holds themselves in the situation by which they can grow as a person. You know, not just like the aesthetics, not the, oh, I'm just going to copy what the person does and I'm going to do the exact same thing where you're mirroring behavior. I mean, actually understand functionally what it means to be a man. And I think that gets lost in a very large feministic conversation that doesn't help the narrative in any way. It just hurts people. And it comes at the cost of us, unfortunately. Of course, and if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to throw them into the chat. We will happy to answer any of them. And so let's go ahead and go into the next one, shall we? All right, so the next talking point is just today, like as I was mentioning before, is there is a lack of young men with respectable male role models. We spend so much time looking at movies, TV shows, and other forms of social media parts to get the, like I could say, the influence or to make our role models, kind of, that we're not acknowledging the fact that real people in the real world need to be able to influence you. It is not enough to be a famous comedian or movie star or athlete and be like, hey, I'm a man, so you must be exactly like me, and that's good enough. You need to actually have real conversations with real people and have lived experience where you learn real lessons that are practical and have outcomes that are at least feasible. Because not everybody can grow up to be a comedian, movie star, or athlete. And so if you say this is only these particular things are masculine, and if you're not this, then you're not masculine, then you are 100% going to be left behind. You are going to feel like you're never good enough, and you're going to crush whatever power and control you had in your life. And I think that's the point. That's what they want us to do. And that's what really creates this sense of, okay, well, hey, if I can't be what I want to be, I don't have a safe place. You know, they're taking my comic books. They're making all this crazy feminist jargon thrown into the comic books, into my movies, into my TV shows. I can't escape anywhere other than going into the middle of the woods. Well, fuck it. Let's just go in the middle of the woods. I can't go anywhere else anyways. And then, like, you get seen as a dangerous person who is out to savagely attack and destroy people. Well, I'd like to say that, like, that whole idea is completely stupid and something should be done about it actively. I mean, you know, feminists want to put all of us paint us all into the same box. They want to say, hey, you're either on our side or you're on their side. And if you're on their side, you're the enemy. And if you don't agree with what we say, you're the enemy. And so it doesn't give you a leg to stand on if you're like, hey, you know, I think that, yeah, we should respect all people. But you know what? We should respect all people, not go, okay, well, these people have been down for a long period of time. Well, so screw everybody else. We're going to promote just them. I think that's really the big problem with the Black Lives Matter, like, whole movement, is that it's a problem for the feminists to go, hey, or not even really feminists, I would just say activists in general, this particular point, that's particularly follow the BLM ideology, that basically say, okay, well, if you're not in support of Black Lives Matter and you say something like all lives matter, then you're automatically a misogynist pig who's there to just basically destroy people. And I think that right there is 100% the problem. And I think that we need to acknowledge the fact that, hey, there are problems in this world and everyone can stand to benefit and everyone can help out and everyone can be affected by it. And to point the finger directly to go, hey, this is your fault and this is why, is wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go on and talk a little bit more about a couple other side things. So one of the things I want to kind of address in this particular episode has a lot to do with the fact that, culturally speaking, things have shifted dramatically when it comes to expectations between young people. So if you think about, like, people, particularly in the let's go with the late 70s, early 80s, right? You know, we had just experienced in the United States a pretty big shift, culturally speaking, with the whole introduction and really kind of like the beginning steps of acceptance of a whole bunch of different things that would have been really extreme concepts to people who had come before it, when it comes to both ethnic minorities in certain living and working conditions, as well as the beginnings of, essentially what do we call this? Would be the second sexual revelation? I don't know. One of the two. no, not that side yet.
Not that one.
Not that one yet. And essentially, what essentially I'm trying to say is that essentially we have all the gay and all the LGBTQ people coming out of the woodworks before that label got created, but like that general group starting to become well aware of and acknowledged, and having to go through some of its craziness, along with the AIDS epidemic, or the whole terrible situation, we'll say, that took out some of my favorite guys. Damn. Anyways, Freddie Mercury will live on forever. Anyways, so when it comes to all that, though, we had all these sorts of shifts, right? And so, like, the way in which men and women related to each other started to shift, because you had women starting to work in like, let's say, the workplace in a more predominant way. Women were more being pushed towards education and pursuing, higher end jobs and things like that, which exponentially caused a cultural shift yet again in a way that people weren't ready for again. And so it was just kind of like this like flip-flopping of one thing after another, and people having to kind of quickly adapt with the times or fall crazy behind. And you fast forward all that stuff today, and the outcome of all this stuff is single moms. We're playing gender politics, and we're playing to tribalism, in almost every avenue that there is. And it comes at the cost of the human narrative, and I think overall the moral narrative in every single position. And instead of us fighting amongst ourselves and only viewing our particular group as the one that's right, we haven't taken the time to go, okay, hey, let's take a look at everybody. Okay, we're okay. Are you over there? You're good. Oh, you're over there. You're good. Okay, cool. Well, great. Now we are on an understanding. I know where you stand. I know where you stand. You know where I stand. Okay, we disagree about these things, but we got a couple things in common. Maybe we can negotiate, and we can kind of like have a, give it like a little give and take, maybe. An
actual conversation,
exactly,
rather than a bunch of screaming.
Exactly. And we don't see that. Instead, we end up having a huge person standing on a podium yelling at one person, while another person that's being yelled at is ignoring what that person's saying, and then saying a bunch of mean shit in response, and just fighting constantly, bickering left and right. And it's not helpful. So I think that all of those things just make guys go, hey, okay, we're going to check out. We're going to go ahead, and we're just going to go into the woods, build a shelter, go hiking, do whatever the hell we want to do, say fuck it to all the social stuff. And, it's like, women, you guys want to find the good men? Well, guess what? You guys priced your guys yourself completely out of the market. And so, you don't even get a chance anymore. I mean, that's what I think's going on. And it's funny because if you think about the number of stories, so if you pay attention to any of these like red pill, like kind of like communities, you'll find that there's a lot of guys out there who are basically just going, oh, hi person, and they'll date the person for like a couple weeks. They might do the whole hit it and quit it kind of situation, but they won't like actually like have a relationship with any of these people, because why would they have a relationship with somebody if they absolutely keep this thing up here, by the way, because I want to explain this for a second. If you already get what you want, then why the hell would you stick around? If you can just keep on going and grabbing the same fruit over and over again. Well, that's because the people who have the ability to do that are like the top 10% dudes. All right, they're the, you know what? Let's just call it the top 30%. Okay, just to make it like a nice, neat number, 7 through 10. That's 7 through 10 right there. With varying levels of success as you get higher up on that ladder. Okay. So throw that slide back up there, or is it up there? I can't see it.
Yes, it is up there.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So this particular graph basically says before the sexual evolution, essentially a 1 could date a 1, a 1 could date, or a 2 could date a 2, and basically back and forth all the way up, right? That basically you had a general level of attractiveness, and you more or less attracted the same types of people. Maybe one less, one more, but general ballpark, right? Now,
1-to-1 type of scenario.
Yeah, more or less, more often, not always, but more or less. Nowadays, if you're a 4 or less, you don't even have a chance. If you're like a 5 or a 6 or a 7, then you be prepared to deal with women who are less than attractive, to put it mildly. We'll say, perhaps maybe could do without eating certain things for an exceptionally large period of time, or are vile and disgusting for reasons that make sense to anybody who is reading into this a little bit, or just are tatted up to like the nines. Yeah, got sleeves, and like some random crap. It's like, it's not even like artistic. It's not like someone's like putting like, oh, here's a really beautiful like flower pattern or something like that, right? No, it's like they have like a fucking like a tramp stamp like on their arm, so I mean, like you get like this random crap, or like you get like the Taco Bell sign on like the side of your, your butt or something. I mean, come on now, all right? Like really, what I mean? Like it's not tasteful tattoos. Anyways, so let me just respond to this real quick. So Kyle, you disagree with the idea before and after the sexual revolution. All right, obviously we'd like to hear why, but I just before we even just get into that particular thing, there's one thing I really want to point to. So that particular graph that appeared on the screen, if you can throw it back up there, that particular thing specifically was referring to the idea of hypergamy, which placates the idea. Well, all right, puts the position. I'm going to put it in better words. To put this in the position of the fact that women want to always reach for the best thing they can possibly get, and it doesn't matter what they look like, what they offer, how they are. They just discard men. And this whole idea of we can do that has been more or less taught to them by a combination of different like situations that have been put forth that have been popularized through TV shows, movies, hookup culture, and a whole bunch of things that are going on social media like every day, where essentially men are disposable. And they think this because men, or the men they're interested in, right? These top 10%er guys, they have access to all these women, so they can quickly just kind of quick and choose. And so women automatically assuming that all guys are going to do that, and that all guys are the same as the guy they're looking for, are the only ones that matter. And so what ends up happening is that most of the time, the guys, the 70% of guys that are out there, they're completely invisible to all women because they're not even on their radar. They aren't attractive enough. They're not tall enough. They don't make enough money. They don't work a sexy job. Whatever the hell, is the thing that disqualifies the guy that make him in that 70 percentile range. And so because of this particular thing, you always have this idea of pursuing better. Now, the part that I will definitely agree with you on about disagreeing is that the idea that it's different. Like today, I would say that hypergamy has always existed. I think it's just the extreme is what's different about it today. I think that like hypergamy probably was the reason why sometimes you get a guy who gets, or a girl who gets 2 points, or let's say specifically a girl gets 2 or 3 points higher on a guy, and a guy will just settle. And also you got to figure the opportunities were dramatically different before the internet. Like I think the one thing that a lot of people like, and I hate to say this, but like I'm technically old enough to remember not an internet day, but. And I was a kid, I'll be honest, I was a kid, so I didn't really have a clear 100% understanding of the inner workings. I was also poor, so, there's that too. But the main point is that it really, everything shifted by about the early 2000s when it came to the way in which people acted. While the early days of the internet, people would talk in chat rooms and did all this sorts of stuff. That was a thing. It didn't really change the fact that, absolutely, the overall concept of, I live in Wichita, Kansas, and I have access to everybody in the entire country to date, which is what's the case today, which is what I think is driving the hypergamy, in comparison to, say, I don't know, before the early 2000s, she had maybe 100 people to choose from, and so while she had hypergamy, she could pick the best dude within 100 miles of her. That was about what she had limited. There's another idea too, is that some of us live in big cities, and so we have this idea that everyone lives in a big city, and so there's women everywhere, there's men everywhere. So the idea of finding a partner is simple. It's they're everywhere, But the truth is the vast majority of the country doesn't live with the same kinds of things. The country's huge, and there's varying levels of people all over the place. And, to point out the fact that, like, of what I'm referring to specifically, I have a clip that show you from YouTube from another channel that I find pretty awesome. His name's Tyler the Fiend. You may have seen it before. He does some red pill content. This is the type of person that is basically super entitled and absolutely showcases what men have to look forward to and why most men are checking out and why it's driving the idea behind, okay, well, why do I go get the high paying job? Why do I pay all the money to get a house? So if the only thing I have to get is a woman like this. So go ahead and play it.
Love telling guys no. I love telling them no when they're like, hey, let me take you out for a drink. No. Let me buy you dinner. No. Hey, you want to hang out? Absolutely not. No, I don't.
Yikes. Just yikes, first and foremost.
Yeah. I mean, play a little bit more.
Yeah, okay.
Because guys don't hear no enough. They don't. I promise you, any guy, he does not hear no enough. And guess what? When it comes from you, you pretty little thing, it's going to rock his world because his ego, down the drain.
Pause it.
Gone.
This right here is exactly the problem here, okay? Like, you can get it off the thing. This particular situation right here is absolutely the problem, okay? This is the attitude that's shared by a very large portion of the dating environment. I've done some experiments because I was planning on doing an episode that was going to look at online dating and seeing oh, hey, it's not as bad as we thought it was, and going over some of the highlights because I'm I want to do positive things, and sometimes we can't. And unfortunately, this was a particular topic that absolutely we couldn't even put to the episode on YouTube because it would just get demonetized instantaneously. And I don't even really care about the monetized part. I just want to make sure we don't get a black mark where we're okay, we hit a strike, 2 more and we're gone. I don't want to put anything up there where that's an issue, and that 100% would be. we have all right, so just to make a super brief note, okay, for the reason why why so many people are just trying to check out super quick when it comes to this is that when men are introduced to women like that, right? When they see a woman like that, most guys would be like, she's still pretty. I don't really care what she's saying, And you might think, oh, that's misogynistic. That's horrible. You're a pig. Well, guess what? Some guys just don't give a shit like that, okay? They really don't. All right? That's just the way it is. But some guys do, and I'm not saying all guys are like that. But I would say that most guys would agree that she's pretty. But when she talks, it's all of it's gone. All right? And it reinforces the idea of, why do I need to pursue a higher paying job and work hours that is going to drain my life to support a girl like that? And in the dating environment today, you have what I can tell as 3 options. You have option 1, which is typically someone who is not exactly desirable for a variety of reasons. Maybe she has a kid. Maybe she's heavily tattooed, scarred, piercings. Maybe it's not your thing. Any of that stuff, right? Or she's just really old, when it comes to things. Maybe she's when I say really old, I mean maybe you're 20, 21, 22, and she's 33 to 36. And so there's a whole lot of things that are automatics. All right. Okay, so let me just respond to a couple of these comments real quick because I see the host and Kyle has both sent some stuff in. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at them. So host says, if you want a night worker, buy one. If you want a queen, earn her. That one show. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with neither of those. First of all, women aren't queens. All right, we just need to put that one in the bed right now, okay? All right, this comes from your mom and the princess fairy tale and other people and crappy terminology. Women, okay, guys, I'm speaking to you directly for this particular episode. If you work for a company or you have a job that pays for a significant portion, if not all the bills, you are the prize, 100%. Okay, you are the king of your castle. She is at best your equal. Okay, and at worst something beneath that. I'm not going to go too far in it because I don't want to sound misogynistic, but I would say that like if she all she does is cook and clean for you, and let's just say that's the minimum requirement for most guys, who's like, hey, I don't really care if you have a job, I don't care if you have a degree, I don't care if you own a bunch of stuff, I don't care if you provide a whole bunch of money or work anything like that. All I care about is you make sure that the house is nice, there's food on the table, and you're happy. Like, if that's all they care about, then like, congratulations, like that's what you want to do. But that's not what's going on today. So it's just, women are not queens, okay? Like, you want I'd say happy, healthy relationships is born of equality, both people being equally responsible for things. This means work and everything else. And as a part of that, you can't be like, she's my queen, I am beneath her. I am this humble peasant that is, bestowed my goddess. It's just, no. And don't ever pay sex workers. There is so much wrong with sex work. Like, all right, so women will say that sex work is liberating. This is in defense of people who do like OnlyFans and things like that. It's not. All right, it's not. So all right. So okay, let me respond to the other thing that host said. I think hypergamy was always a thing. It's just easier to see now that there are more options. 100% agree. It's what I was saying before. I 100% agree with that. All right, Kyle. Let's get into your two things. Okay, so small and biased sample size here, but I know plenty of women who feel discarded by men. Okay, all right. Well, there's a difference between feel and are. Just throwing it out there. Also, when it comes to the sample size of this particular thing, who are they being discarded by? Are they being discarded by the guy who works at Foot Locker, who's working a pretty low entry job, who's just a good person, or were they discarded by a guy who is like a postdoctorate candidate, or like a lawyer, or like a doctor, or some hyper guy, what I'm saying, like somebody who's like super high end, like women choose these kinds of people, right? So if they feel discarded, then they're going to there's going to be a reason behind it. It's not just, oh look, there was a whole bunch of women who basically picked the same guy, and then they get trashed. But we're going a little bit thick in the weeds here. I don't want to get too pinned down in this pigeonhole here. But yeah, I mean, essentially speaking, men basically lack options, and that's why I think they're checking out. And that's the reason why I think that like we have an entire generation of men who basically don't know how to be men. They're raised by a single mother who doesn't have a masculine figure. They don't know how to survive. If we dropped in the middle of the woods, most wouldn't even know how to start a fire. Most couldn't build you a shelter, and most couldn't even get you safe drinking water or hunt anything. You would die. They'd drop in the woods and they'd die. All right. Maybe some guys will figure it out, but most of the time I would think that they're not. Okay. And the the next thing Kyle mentions is it wouldn't be fair to say that most American men need higher standards and should do more to take care of their looks. Okay. All right. I'm going to say that's a mixed bag. Okay, when it comes to that, I would say American men could do with taking care of themselves a little better. I would say that when it comes to looks, I think that's more of a genetics thing. I think that's just shitty genetics. Some people, their mom, their dad, and all the people were fat. They're going to be fat probably.
Some people get the quote-unquote lottery.
Yeah, some people get lucky when it comes to genetic sample. And if you live in an area where fitness is kind of necessary, where you have to walk everywhere, well, then chances are that you're probably not going to be fat. That's just going to be the way it is. I mean, if you look at Japanese people, for instance, right? I mean, like their percentage of people who are obese in Japan is less than 20%.
Look it up real quick.
Yeah, go ahead and throw it up. We'll go ahead and look it up for a quick second while we're talking about this. But yeah, I mean, depending on the culture, right? It's all about those things. So you can make the argument that yes, American men could do something to maybe make themselves look and be a little bit more appealing. But I would also say that it is, oh my god, it's way less than I thought.
That was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was low, but I was like, holy shit. Yeah. So, but anyways, back to the point. Well, leave this on while I'm talking for a second. Okay. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is that while American men could 100% do with making themselves particularly look better in the category of knowing how to actually dress themselves. And I will say this as a man who, we would say that my dad was not an active father. I definitely was raised, largely not by my father. I tentatively will put, you know what, I'm not even going there. Point I'm going to say is this, right? I have no idea how to dress properly. All right. Like I'll throw on like a suit and I'll probably be doing the horrible thing with the brown belt, black pants thing. All right. Like 100%. Like I have no fashion sense whatsoever. And I definitely think that's something that American men could potentially learn. Something that even I could learn, is learn how to, at least present myself better, you know? Also, I mean, I think there's just a whole bunch of like small details that should matter. But let's put it this other way too. Okay, so like let's look at that percentage real quick for the Japanese thing, right? So about 32% of Americans are considered fat or obese, right? And I think it's like, what was it? Are we looking at like what's the exact rate right now? It's like 30 something. It's like 3 point something percent. Like 3.6. Okay, yeah, 3.6% for Japanese. Okay, yeah. Oh no, you're like typing along. Okay. Anyways, so 3.6% is what the overall people, when it comes to being overweight, is over there in comparison to the 32% of Americans here. So I think that just speaks to culture. I mean, in Japan, you have to walk fucking everywhere. All right. In America, we get in our cars, we drive somewhere. All right. Like that's just like, that's kind of what it is. We also typically eat really bad food, that's filled with all sorts of things that are really not good for the body. Once again, culturally speaking. So like in order to shift, for men, American men, they'd have to change the culture. I don't know about you, but like, have you ever tried to change even one thing about the culture for, if you're a man? You know, and to make it to another point too, let's say like have women change the culture too. When have women done a damn thing for men in any way, shape, or form? Like, in all honesty, like think about it. Like look at the courts, right? When was the last time divorce anything was handled? When was the last time alimony was taken a look at from a legal perspective? When was the last time when child custody issues come up? Like when is the last time women have gone, you know what, men are getting kind of a short end of the shaft over here, maybe we should do something about it? You know, like you haven't heard this because it never happened. Like there's no reason, there's no precedent for this. Like there's some women who have spoken out, like, you know, in like a social media sense, going, hey, this kind of sucks for men, we should do something about it. But like, did anything actually happen? No. So I think that, you know, to put the entire like weight of this is kind of speaking to the whole reason why we had this episode in the first place, is that it is easier for us from a narratively driven perspective to say, let's go ahead and throw away the whole idea of men's rights. We'll call it like a big group thought for all people, but then we're going to ignore the people who suffer the most under this. Okay. Let's go to the next thing. I'm sorry about all that stuff. And hey, Kyle, or host, the Discord, please, if you're not there, join it if you haven't already. We can totally talk about this in way more detail there. So anyways, next thing we're going to talk about has to do with the fact that we have to acknowledge what life is like for someone who is considered to be, you know, would be one of these lost boys generation. You know, I mean, like, okay, so imagine for a second, okay, you live your life, all right, and you go through puberty, you have all these hormones, all these, like, you know, drives and stuff like that, and you, let's say hypothetically you're heterosexual and you pursue women, okay, and turns out you absolutely, like, women aren't interested for whatever reason. That's going to affect the way that person's going to view the world in a pretty significant way. You know, now I want you to just really think about this for a second, because I think that a lot of people don't really. And that is the idea that, hey, when you were, let's say 16 or 17, and I am speaking, of course, in like to a heterosexual like point here. So if you don't find yourself in this particular category, then think of it like in the inverse, right? Because it doesn't really matter if you're, you know, it doesn't matter what you are necessarily or what you're interested in. I think that the idea is the same, and that is the whole, if you were trying to pursue something and you couldn't, then it means that you are lacking, like you will feel less inclined to pursue it more. And I think that, like, if you're a shorter person, if you are a person who is, you know, let's say not, you know, classically beautiful, like I would consider myself like ugly as hell. So like, you know, that's half the reason why there's a bear right there right now. Nah, I'm actually joking. It's because there are changes going on. Anyways, but I mean, truthfully speaking, like I know that, like, aesthetically speaking, I'm not a good looking person. And I know this because my brother is, and like the attention that my brother will get in comparison to my attention when we were younger is just astronomically different. And so like the way in which people like even approach both of us, you know, people approach me with trepidation and fear. They approach my brother with acceptance and happiness, because, you know, he's good looking, and typically if you're good looking, you're safe. And so like that, just the whole way in which the world interacts with you is going to shape the way in which you're going to interact with it and the way you're going to perceive it. And so for people who are, you know, not in that particular camp, who are not able to pursue women, who can't go ahead and go get the things that they want and do, then they are further discouraged from partaking that. So you get situations where guys will go, okay, well, I guess I don't have to go and spend a bunch of money on cologne and like nice clothes and like super nice cars. I guess I can just, you know, buy a bunch of video games and play games for the rest of my fucking life, because like what else am I gonna do? You know, they don't, instead of saving up money for, you know, like kids and, you know, and houses and things like that, they'll just go, okay, well, this apartment's pretty cheap, let's go ahead and rent this out and, you know, see what happens. They don't have the outlook to pursue higher things. So, you know, what I think a lot of guys are going to find themselves doing is that, you know, because they don't have that reason, that drive to try and pursue something bigger, better, greater, they're likely going to have, I would say, meek existences with very little opportunities to essentially pursue something that's greater. And it sucks because a lot of guys lack confidence. That's the main thing. And women who essentially don't even give guys a chance will never give those guys who could be something that they'd be interested in the opportunity to develop, so that way they are that way. And because of that, we get this perpetuating cycle of the same shit, and it is pulling a larger and larger group of people who are basically being dismissed. And I think that's really terrible. The last point I want to get to tonight, and this is kind of like a big one. This is the one that I hope that everyone hears and they really take part in. I'm a really big like fan of Jordan Peterson. I'm sure you guys probably, who have been watching the show for a while, probably haven't guessed. Oh my God, that's so surprising. But there's a couple things that he's said over the years that I think ring exceptionally true. The first main point that he pulls up is from his first book called The 12 Rules for Life. And you'll see on the screen all 12 of the basic rules, the tenets of his particular ideology, and his book is built on this. And I would strongly encourage anybody to read both, because they're like two sides of the same coin. And while it looks like they're really just additive, they're really just like introspectively like talking about a lot of similar points. They're just expanding on them. And I think when it comes to this particular thing, if you read through the list, particularly 1, 4, 8, and 12, it really points to all the things that would help you be traditionally masculine if you're a guy. You know, if you fix your posture, one of the biggest problems guys do is they walk around all day hunched over, sad, because like they're not getting what they want. All right. But if you look up and stand up straight and you kind of put your chest forward, well, guess what? If you're a little bit heavy set, that gut kind of dials back down a little bit. It's not as in your face. It also gives you a sense of an air of authority and confidence that a lot of guys may not feel, but it will appear like they do. And that is, and those kinds of things, each of those points that I have all speak to that. And I could go through each one, but we don't have time. But I really would encourage you to consider those particular things that I point out, because I think that makes a case to show that we are unaware of just what we're lacking. And I think that it's really problematic. Now, there's a clip that I kind of want to show that's really also important that Jordan Peterson talks about, and it's the idea of cleaning up your room. Now, the clip is about 6 minutes long. We're only going to play the first, I think, like about 20 or 30 seconds of it. But I want you to hear this out, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to wrap up.
Think, okay, if I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? And you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command, it's like a genuine question. And things will pop out in the room that you like, there's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and you know that maybe little order there would be a good thing, and you haven't, there's some rubbish behind your computer monitor that you haven't attended to for like 6 months, and the room would...
Okay, so like one of the things that I kind of want to like point out is the fact that like when it comes to this, is he's highlighting things that are in your common world, your everyday life. These are going to be things that are fairly common to just about anybody who has a computer at home and has a desk. Okay, like these are things that you're gonna find. And I think that one of the main like issues, the main things is this: we don't do enough to make ourselves better. And when you're a guy who doesn't know classically how to be a man, then you absolutely need to be able to find different ways in which you can influence and have control and have some level of, I would say, respect for your surroundings. And I think it is incredibly important to have that understanding built in to your identity, to the core of who you are. Because if you don't follow through with all the things that you set out to do in your life, then you're going to be living a murky existence. It's going to be so wishy-washy that if you do eventually build something up, it will completely collapse. And I think when we talk about masculinity and we talk about why guys just basically go, oh, we're going to be gone, we're checking out, then I think that we're doing an injustice to young boys. We're doing an injustice to women, because we're going to make the pool of available men that women would be interested in smaller. We're going to make the boys who are born basically pariahs, or either a pariah in society, or they're going to be completely pushed out of it one way or the other. And at the end of the day, who is this serving? Who does this make better? My thought is that it doesn't make it better. I think it really just makes a mockery of everything that everyone stands for, and it breaks down everything that we want. And I think that this is what's driving the idea that, hey, I would rather just be a boy while I'm 25, 30, 40, 35, 40. I'll get my RV, I'll get my boat, I'll get my nice car, all right? I'll buy like a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, and I'll just do whatever the hell I want to do whenever I want to do it. I'll play video games if I want to play video games. There's no one going to be telling me what to do, because no one cares about me. And I think that like that whole thing needs to stop. The whole thing. It's not that I think that people shouldn't have the right to do those things. It's that it shouldn't be mandatory for the large, vast portion of the population that this is your only way to feel any modicum of happiness. It should be that you should have an equal chance at being able to be happy, just like everybody else. But in the society today, it's you're not a woman, you're not a person of color. Well, guess what? You don't get a chance. And that's what it feels like to a lot of guys. Anyways, I want to talk about more of this stuff. I hope that you guys found this particular episode engaging. I really appreciate the comments and the questions. And if you guys want to talk to me again, of course, feel free to join the Discord, message me on Discord. If you have a really long thing to say, and maybe you don't want to say it publicly, then just go ahead and email us at awickedparley@gmail.com. But that's been this particular episode. Have a great evening, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Later.